So, welcome to NOAA Live Alaska. My name is Story Oates, and I'm going to be moderating today's webinar. This series is a collaborative effort by NOAA Fisheries Alaska Fisheries Science Center, where I work, NOAA's Alaska Regional Collaboration Network, and NOAA's National Weather Service. I also want to introduce my co-coordinators, Lisa Hiruki-Raring and Mabel Baldwin-Schaefer, who will be helping me behind the scenes. There's Lisa. Thank you. This webinar is designed to help you get to know NOAA's work in Alaska, our partners and the communities we work with, and how we connect with your community. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, studies the ocean and the atmosphere and where the two meet, from weather to ocean to the animals that live around us. This school year, we're presenting a short series of webinars that are more regionally based so that we can focus on topics of interest to those regions in Alaska. We are aiming to present perspectives from the communities we work with, as well as research conducted by students and established scientists. We are kicking off our year with a webinar on marine debris, with a focus on its impacts in Southeast Alaska. This webinar is also serving as a jumping off point for Raven Wright's Ocean Keepers, a 5th grade writing curriculum co-developed by the Juneau School District, Sea-Alaska Heritage Institute, and Southeast Regional Resource Center, or SERC, Alaska's Education Resource Center. We are excited to have so many of the 5th grade students and their teachers joining us today. So today, I want to introduce you to Peter Murphy, who is the Alaska Coordinator for Alaska's Marine Debris Program, Kim Ramsurian and Barb Lake, who work for NOAA Fisheries Alaska Regional Office in Juneau, Alaska, and Rena Basiliso, a senior attending Thunder Mountain High School in Juneau, Alaska. While we'll be talking about NOAA's and our partners' role in research and stewardship, we want to recognize that we are all coming to you from the traditional lands of Indigenous communities who have substantial traditional and local knowledge and much to share with us. We acknowledge that the NOAA scientists you will hear from today work in the coastal waters of Alaska. NOAA's Marine Debris Program does work in all coastal waters in the continental United States. In Alaska, Peter's work is conducted all along Alaska's coastlines from the Arctic to Southeast Alaska, which from north to south are the traditional home waters of the Inupiat, Yupik, Inungan, Alutut, Eyak, Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people. Kim and Barb's work is conducted throughout Southeast Alaska, which includes the traditional homelands and waters of the Alutut, Eyak, Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian, who have stewarded their lands and waters since time immemorial. We are indebted to their wisdom and the knowledge of their lands and waters. Peter is presenting from Seattle, Washington, the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, including the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people past and present, who have stewarded the area for thousands of years. Kim, Barb, and Rena are presenting from the ancestral homelands of the Occoquan and Takuquan Tlingit peoples. The community thrives thanks to their continued sharing of vision, wisdom, values, and leadership. A few guidelines before I hand you over to our first speaker. You are all muted because we have a lot of people on the line and want to make sure everyone can hear our speakers. However, there is a box where you can write questions. We encourage you to ask them as we go, and my colleagues Lisa, Mabel, and I will be keeping track for our speakers. We will stop every now and then and answer a few questions. We may not get to all of our questions, but we'll try to answer as many as we can. Okay, I'll hand it over to Peter to introduce himself.
Hello, just one moment. I have to set up a setting really quick. So one moment, get this going. All right, one moment. I'm gonna have to re-enter, be right back.
So in the meantime, while we're waiting for Peter, if you haven't put your name in and where your class is from or where you're from, please go ahead and do so in the chat box. And we're really excited to see everybody on.
Hello, can folks see me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Sorry about that. I just needed to set up so that it was a security issue. Always fun with these things. So anyway, my name is Peter Murphy. I'm the Alaska coordinator for the NOAA Marine Debris Program. And so I'm here and I'm excited to speak with you about marine debris in the state of Alaska. So just one moment. And I am going to now share my screen. Just one moment. All right, can folks see the presentation now?
Yes, looks good.
Great. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to talk about marine debris in the state of Alaska. Apologize for the tech issues there. Despite being 2 years with a lot of tech online, still always new things to figure out, as we all know. So first, a little bit of an outline. I always make outlines for things I do, whether that's, when I was in school, it was a report or an essay. Now they're reports or white papers or academic journal articles, whatever it might be. I always do outlines. So I'm going to make it anyway. Figured I'd share it with you. So first, introduction. Who's this guy anyway? What's my deal? Why am I here? That's first. And marine debris. What does that even mean? What are we talking about? What does that look like, especially in the context of Alaska marine debris? And how is it unique? Alaska is unique in so many ways. Marine debris is also unique in Alaska. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, as well as how does all of this marine debris get to Alaska, which is an important layer of the overall marine debris issue. And I'm excited that you guys are also going to hear from other folks about other elements of the marine debris issue in Alaska, including impacts and options and opportunities for things that you guys can do. So first, introduction. Who's this guy anyway? So there's me. There's a smaller version of me at the top left. That's I think my kindergarten photo. But then there's also pictures of me doing work for marine debris in different spots. Bottom left is in Southeast Alaska doing a crab pot project. Top right is at a museum, talking with kids. It's one of my favorite things, getting to talk to people. So I'm really glad to talk with you today. And at bottom right is in the Pribilof Islands, where we were doing an abandoned derelict vessel removal, so up in the Bering Sea. So I started working with marine debris back in 2007, so about 15 years ago now. So it's been a minute, as the kids say. And I really feel very fortunate to have this job and to get to work on this issue. So many people do amazing work on marine debris, but as their second, third, or fourth job, they're focused on seabirds or seals or a specific area, but then they work on marine debris part-time. I get to have it be my full-time job. And even though it's a big issue, it's a really inspiring one. I actually studied in school, I actually studied information systems, so like data and how to manage it. That was what I first focused on, but actually that's come in really handy because so much science results in data, and you need to figure out how to organize it, how to look at it. So it's been really helpful. And science has always been a passion of mine. I always loved being out in the environment. So marine debris, what is that anyway? So first, the question is, what kind of things do you normally see when you visit a beach? So what are some examples? If you can pop those in to the questions or answers, that'd be great, and we can talk through them.
Great. So if you can, what do you see at the beach? What do you normally see? Pop it into the chat there. Let's see what we come up with. All right, we're getting some folks saying that they see a lot of sand and rocks. Sand, bottle, sea stars,
yeah,
shells.
Yep. Oh, sea stars are awesome.
More shells, lots of seashells.
Lots of seashells. That's great. You guys are going to the good beaches.
Logs, garbage, sticks, rocks, anemones, ropes, cigarette butts.
All right, this is a great list. Thank you guys so much. I think, so one key thing is in that list, what you might notice is some of those items are naturally occurring, like nature creates them, right? Seaweed, rocks, shells, and other are not. Ropes, line, bottles, the first one I heard. So that's really the core differential when we talk about marine debris. And you can see that in these images. The one at left from the Kodiak Archipelago shows, except for those kids and the bags they're carrying, that's all naturally occurring stuff, right? On the right, that's a much dirtier beach with a lot of different items on it. So when we talk about marine debris, what we're saying really it's man-made objects or person-made objects that are persistent. They're in the last environment, and they can be from micro to macro or mega. So from small to big. So that center top image there, that's a tiny bit of foam plastic like styrofoam that's on a beach in Gore Point on the outer coast in the Gulf of Alaska. At top left, you see some buoys. Bottom right, or bottom center rather, is Dungeness crab pots from Southeast Alaska. Those ones I think are from down in Duncan Canal. At top right and bottom right, you also have derelict vessels, so huge vessels that somebody has left behind or got wrecked and no one had the money or time to deal with. So that just shows the wide range of objects, and they can have different impacts, which we'll talk about later. So when we say persistent man-made or person-made material, so really that's things created by human processes. The definition in the dictionary is made or caused by human beings, as opposed to occurring or not being made naturally. Persistent, things that last a long time, that continue to exist or endure. So an example at right is, you can see at top right, that's an old fishing net, like from a long time ago, made of natural fibers. So if that fishing net got lost, it might catch things accidentally, but it's going to degrade, it's going to break down over time and stop working. At bottom right, you see modern fishing nets, obviously much brighter, but also made with plastics. They're going to last a lot longer when they're out in the environment, and thus have impacts for longer. And that's an important layer of this, is that duration. So another element of this is that microplastics. You may have heard of microplastics. They're small plastics that have been defined as things less than 5 millimeters in size, about the size of like a pencil eraser, a little smaller. And so they're a common form of plastics in general are a common form of marine debris. They're non-biodegradable. It's estimated there were 8 million metric tons of plastic entered the ocean back in 2010 when they based this study based on leakage from like garbage, landfills and such. But those over time break into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics. Now, when we talk about microplastics, like I said, they're smaller than 5 millimeters. They come from a few different ways. So this is an example, and you can hold it up to the camera. These are called primaries, so that they were designed to be this size. These are actually, you can kind of see it's like a soup. These are microbeads that were made from facial cleanser. So like something that you use to scrub your face, right? Now they've now been outlawed. They're no longer in consumer products, but for a long time they were. Even things like toothpaste had microplastics in them. Another example is pre-production pellets. You can see these. These are actually, whenever you make a plastic object, you start with these tiny little pellets. That image at the top right also is of pellets. And then you melt them down into a form to create plastics. So that's primary. They were designed to be tiny. Then they leak into the environment, and then they get even smaller. Secondary is when you have a big object and it breaks down over time. So something like a buoy or a big buoy like this, but more often things like water bottles, they're going to break down over time into smaller and smaller pieces. So when things do get into the ocean, which oftentimes that happens indirectly, meaning they get accidentally disposed of improperly on land, and then they wash out down through rivers or others into the ocean, but sometimes they go directly into the ocean, they can end up going really far away. We saw that in the cases of the Japan tsunami, where a lot of debris that was started in Japan made its way across all the way to Alaska. This buoy is an example that I found on an Alaskan beach that actually has Asian writing on it. And it's an example of something that had traveled a significant distance from where it first went into the ocean. But you can also see these images here. And what that leads to is debris traveling a significant distance. So next, how does debris get onto shorelines? Well, from a few different ways. First is currents. So debris moves by currents in the oceans that move debris around, but also by winds. So currents, so as an example, you can see those major at the top left. You see those images of large scale current patterns in the world's oceans and gyres, those kind of circular patterns. Well, and then you see at lower left, the image of the North Pacific. You can see the Kuroshio current, which comes across and becomes the Alaska current going north, or the California current going south. So you have currents that bring debris from the open ocean close to Alaskan shorelines, and then winds that bring them onto shore. So really the combination of currents and winds act on objects, and how high they float in the water matters as to how much they're influenced by currents or by winds. Things that float higher are influenced more by winds. At bottom right, you see that graphic. It's kind of noisy. There's a lot going on, but it shows this consistent pattern of storms in the winter in the Gulf of Alaska curving up into the Gulf of Alaska, into the shoreline, which can drive debris that comes near shore onto the shoreline. So with that, we're going to actually have a short demonstration really quick here about what that looks like. So I'm going to turn off my screen share so that you guys can see me. So here we go. So what I've got here is a simulated body of water. Okay, So now you've got a buoy and a piece of net. So watch this. I'm just simply going to blow on this really quick. See how fast the buoy moved? And the net's just still sitting there. So the net is an example of a low windage object that is more notably impacted or acted upon by currents rather than wind. And so that's an example of something that's going to move more slowly and thus be more low energy over time. That's an important element of how we get so much debris on Alaskan shorelines from the open ocean. So with that, I want to say thanks very much, and I will see if we have time for questions.
Okay, if you have any questions for Peter, now's the time to drop it into the chat. We did have one question come up about climate change and how that might be impacting the marine debris moving around in Alaska. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Climate change is, of course, a huge issue and much broader with impacts all up and down, of course. A few ways, there's a lot of them. A few ways that that's happening is that we're seeing activity, human activity, in different parts of the ocean than we did previously. And so with less ice in the Arctic, we're seeing fishing activity going further north and potential for that to increase over time. And so that's an area where we're seeing more activity in different parts of the Arctic based on climate change. But also you have coastal erosion that increases, and that can release debris from landfills that were near shore, or sorry, near the shoreline on the uplands. That can get washed out and release new sources of debris. That is something that many communities are concerned about. And also storms can be bigger. There's a lot of ways. Actually, storms being bigger can mean larger storms, which means that vessels are more likely to lose cargo. There's a lot of different ways in which climate change can create or change the overall debris picture. So it's a definite layer on top of the existing issue.
Great, thank you. We have another question here from Ms. Watts's class. What is the most common trash found on the beaches of Alaska?
Well, it depends. In Alaska, I'd have to go back to you with a specific answer. It kind of depends on the part of the state. Alaska often you see a lot of consumer items. So things like, cans or water bottles. I've got one over there. So those are examples. You see consumer items, certainly day to day. Also, you see a lot of fragments, broken up things where you can't really tell where they came from because of the high energy on the beaches. Like an example like this. Right now, you can see this is a buoy, right? But if you broke this up into little shards, like the size of like your thumbnail, would you be able to say what it was? Probably not. So we do see a lot of that, and we do see a lot of items related to fishing industry, whether that's open ocean or Alaskan fisheries. Often hard to tell, but we do see net, line, buoys, that sort of thing, certainly quite a bit. So it's a lot of different things.
Great, and we've got a couple more here before we move on to our next session, but real quick, will the wind move the net eventually? And then yes. On top of that, how long has NOAA been keeping track of marine debris?
Very good question. So first question, yes, the wind would move the net because currents are actually influenced by winds as well. They're just in it's a different way. So the wind is moving the water as opposed to the object itself. So indirectly, but yes, wind would also move the net too, because the top of the water column, the top surface, is going to be moved more by wind as currents, by wind-driven currents as well. So yes, the wind would move the net just at a slower rate and also in a different direction. Very quick example of how randomly the ocean does this. During the Japan tsunami, there were three docks that left the same port at the same time. They were all washed out, big docks, like 60 feet long, 20 feet wide. And one ended up in Washington, one ended up in Oregon, and one ended up in Hawaii. And they all should have been acted upon the same by wind and currents because of the same shape, same size, same everything. They were exact twins. Next question, how long has NOAA been doing this? Well, the program that I work for has been around since 2006. So about 16 years? However, scientists with NOAA, especially even in Alaska, have been working on counting debris on shorelines since the 1980s. Some of the earliest work on marine debris, even globally, was done in Alaska by scientists who were doing other work and started noticing marine debris and got interested, got curious or concerned, and said, hey, we should start counting this. So some of the formative work, there's some awesome papers that were done back in the 80s by scientists right in Alaska.
Fabulous. All right, we've got one more question. How would less heat affect the current?
You know, I'm not an oceanographer by trade. Now, so I wouldn't be able to answer that simply, but if that person wants to send me an email, there's a colleague that I work with closely on marine debris modeling who's an oceanographer, and he's awesome, and I'm very happy to connect. It would kind of depend on where the heat was, is my initial answer, like whether there's more heat in which part of the water column and at what time of year, because obviously that can influence current patterns, because you have temperature differentials can drive that. But I couldn't answer that directly, but I would be very happy to connect you with someone who can and smarter than me on this stuff.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. Now, I know we have a few more questions about animals getting entangled in marine debris, and that is a perfect segue to move us to our next speaker, Kim Ramsurian. So I'm going to switch that over now, and we will get back into talking about those issues. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear from Kim too.
Thanks, Peter. That was awesome. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, great. That was a perfect beginning. And now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the impacts of marine debris, specifically on sea lions, which is what I've been working on for a long time. So my outline, like Peter, I'm going to introduce myself, talk about some impacts, and then start off on some of the things that we can all do to help, and then I'll pass it off to Barb and Rena to continue on. Okay, so as I said, my name is Kim, and that's me on the left when I was little, and I still have the same haircut. I guess I need to find a new look. Anyway, I've been working with marine mammals for probably about 32 years now. And back in the late 90s, I started collecting data on entanglements of sea lions in Alaska. So I've been really interested in trying to reduce marine debris and entanglements. Before that, I was helping to disentangle monk seals out in Hawaii. So this is something I'm really passionate about, and I really do believe that all of us working together, we can make a huge difference and make things better for all of these animals. So sadly, the number of marine species that are becoming entangled or that are actually swallowing pieces of plastic or different parts of marine debris has really been increasing. It affects now over 900 different marine species. And that can be when animals get entangled in nets, either active fishing or a lot of nets that are abandoned or are lost at sea during storms, things like that. A lot of trash, like this poor bird is entangled in a balloon and streamers. Some countries have actually banned balloons because they are such a problem. This fish, I think everybody probably knows about six-pack rings. Now we have the issue of all these masks out in our environment because of COVID. So making sure we always cut any loops is really important. And then ropes and nets, garbage. This is a little hair tie that was around a salmon in Alaska. And then sometimes seabirds will mistake pieces of plastic, or maybe like their food is growing around the plastic, so it smells like their food. They swallow that and they come back to feed their chicks, and they end up feeding their chicks a bunch of plastic. This is an albatross chick, actually in Hawaii, but its parents are probably feeding up in Alaska, and it came back and fed its chick all this plastic and lighters and everything, and then the chick died on shore, and that's not unusual. So it's a real problem for marine species. And also, like Peter mentioned, microplastics and microfibers, which can be from clothes that are not made from natural materials, so synthetic materials, or it was really great when they started kind of recycling plastic and making clothes out of plastic, but then when you wash those clothes, those little pieces of plastic get out into the environment in the water. So I thought this was interesting that microplastic is occurring right here in Southeast Alaska, and it's been found in rain, snow, streams, beaches, and actually on glaciers. This is a really neat picture here. This is a grain, 1 grain of rice, and here's a little piece of microplastic fibers. You can see how tiny that is. So as I mentioned, I've been working with Steller sea lions for quite a long time, and back in the year 2000, when I was working for Alaska Department of Fish and Game, we were doing a lot of Steller sea lion research, and while we were out there, we started noticing all these animals that were entangled in marine debris. And so we started collecting that data. And over the past 20 or so years, we've identified at least 855 individuals that have either been entangled in marine debris or that have swallowed fishing hooks. And this is just in Southeast Alaska, and just during like a 2 to 3 week period during the summer. So we know that the numbers are much higher than the little bit of data that we're able to capture. So I have a question for all of you. What types of materials do you think can entangle sea lions? If you could put that into the chat.
All right, everyone. So what do you think can entangle a sea lion? Oh, we already have one coming in from Texas. Packing bands, ropes, nets. What else do we have here? Fishing line, fishing nets, nets, soda loops, more nets, rubber bands, hooks, plastic drink loops.
Right. Yeah. You guys are on it. You know what's entangling marine mammals. You're right. So actually, sorry, Story.
Go ahead. There's just lots coming in.
So in Southeast Alaska, actually, plastic packing bands are the #1 entanglement for Steller sea lions. And I'm sure you've all seen plastic packing bands. They're kind of on everything now. They're on shipping boxes and bait boxes and fish boxes. And, you go to any big box store and you see them wrapped around everything. So, this is something, this is relatively new. We didn't used to use plastic packing bands on everything. So this is another place where we could change our practices and not have all of these plastic packing bands that are out that, end up getting into the environment. This picture here with this big blue wad of basically it's just a wad of packing bands. We found this floating in Southeast Alaska. So you could imagine what kind of damage that could be as it broke down into smaller and smaller pieces. The second most common are these black rubber bands, or sometimes they're cut inner tube tires. They're primarily used on pot fisheries like crab pots and other types of pots. But it's possible they could be coming from other sources too. So in this bottom left corner, you can see this band around a pair of snowshoes that were at the store. So there could be other sources other than pots, could be not just fisheries. And then of course, like you all mentioned, nets and ropes and lines, and then other types of garbage. This subadult male sea lion ended up getting a tire around his neck. Luckily, they were able to dart him and get this off, which was great. Unfortunately, this adult female swam into a windsock somehow, and it pinned her flippers to her body, and it caused her to drown. So, these are just terrible things out in the environment that don't belong there. Another thing that we've been seeing more recently over the past few years, and this is it's a big problem in the United Kingdom right now, are these frisbees, these double ring frisbees. So those are another entanglement hazard. So my next question is, how do you think sea lions get entangled in marine debris?
All right, everyone, what do you think? Pop it into the chat. How do you think sea lions can get entangled? All right, our first response here, curious and swim into it, maybe jumping out of the water, thinking it's food, chasing prey, another swimming into it. They don't see it and swim into it. They're just curious. It's in their habitat. They swim into it, they eat it, trying to get food, accidentally swallow. They rub against rocks where the debris is. These are some really great answers. What do
Really
you
great
think, Kim?
Yeah, definitely. I heard a lot of people say curious, which is very true. So sea lions remind me so much of dogs. They love to play with things they find in the water. So just like you all said, they find this loop floating around in the water. They start playing with it and they throw it up in the air and it ends up right around their neck. And I actually saw a sea lion do this one time with one of those double ring frisbees. He was nosing it, throwing it around, threw it up in the air, and it landed right around his neck. So, you know, that's exactly how they're getting rings around their neck. And then, you know, they don't have hands. They can't lift the object off their neck. And so sadly, then as they grow, because a lot of the times they're young and you know, they're curious and they're playful. And so they find this when they're young, and then as they grow, it starts cutting into their neck because oftentimes these materials don't break down. So they stay around the neck. So for many, many years, remember I said we started collecting this data back in 2000. Well, we didn't have a safe way to capture and disentangle sea lions because we didn't have the right kind of drug. The drug that was around at the time, if you darted the sea lion and it went into the water, it would drown. So for all these years, we had to just collect this data and watch them suffer, and we couldn't help them, which was horrible. But luckily, some really smart veterinarians came up with this new drug combination, so we actually can dart some of the sea lions that we come across that have entanglements, and we can remove those entanglements and let them go. However, again, that's just a very small number that we can reach, so we really need to focus on prevention. But I thought you guys might like to see what we do, how we disentangle the sea lions. So I'm just going to really quickly show you just a few slides. So when we see an entangled sea lion with like this picture on the left, you can see the sea lion there that we're looking at with that big neck entanglement. We first have to estimate his weight because we need to figure out how much drug to give him. And then our veterinarian, usually Kate Savage, who's our veterinarian, she will dart the sea lion and hopefully he'll fall asleep on land. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes they go in the water. And then the first thing we do while Kate's monitoring the sea lion, making sure that he's got enough oxygen and doing well, the first thing we do is remove that entanglement. And you can see how horrible the swoon in this top left photo. This is a packing band that we're removing from this sea lion. If they do go in the water, we can still pretty much do everything we need to do, and we just have to do it from the water, so it's a little more challenging. And then because we're really interested in their survival after we let them go, we can glue a satellite tag to the top of their head on their fur, and that will give us really detailed information about their movements, but it's usually short term. Or we can use this flipper satellite tag that you see in the bottom right, and that will last sometimes for a couple years. So that will tell us that the sea lion is still alive and doing well. So that's really good information for us. And then we do some marking. So we use hair dye to put a number on the sides of the sea lion so that just easier for us to see him after we let him go. We do some measurements and other samples, and then our veterinarian will give him a reversal drug to wake him back up, and then we let him go. And this is just some track lines, some of those satellite tags that gives you an idea. Each color represents a different individual, and you can see how their movements are really different. This guy went way up here to Kayak Island. You can see, you know, this guy in green kind of stayed around southeast Alaska. This one liked Icy Strait and stayed right around there. So yeah, we get some really great data from those satellite tags. And these are just some examples of some of the materials that we've removed. So you can see how the packing bands don't break. They just sort of fray over time and get thinner and thinner. So they're really awful. And then this is a steel belt that we took off of the neck of a sea lion. So let's talk about some solutions. I'll start off and then I'll pass it off to Barb and Rena. So like I mentioned, we really want to focus on prevention. We want to make sure these materials don't get out there in the first place. So one thing we did back in 2009 is we started a pinniped entanglement group. So we're a global community dedicated to the safety and welfare of pinnipeds, which are seals and sea lions. And we have members all across the world now. We started with just 4 of us in the United States. We now have 148 members in 18 countries and on all continents except Antarctica. So really cool to have this dedicated group of people around the world all trying to reduce entanglements. And if I can ask Story to show us the video, that would be great.
All right, here we go. So you all may need to pop the video into the front of your screen, but hopefully you're all seeing it. And just gotta find.
Have you ever wondered what happens to that trash or lost fishing gear that falls into the ocean? Far too often, it ends up catching the attention of seals and sea lions, who can suffer and die from becoming entangled in it. Many of these marine mammals are injured or die unnecessarily from entanglements every year. How can you help? It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Lose the loop. Be sure to cut every loop before throwing it into the trash. And stash the trash. Keep plastic and other garbage out of the ocean by bagging and discarding it properly. Refuse single use. Recycling keeps trash out of our landfills and off our shores. By taking these 3 steps, you can keep the ocean entanglement free for seals, sea lions, and other marine creatures.
Thanks, Story. So if we have time for questions, I can answer some now or wait till the end.
We do have a couple questions. First one is, where are we? Mrs. Cook's class wants to know if whales can get caught in marine debris.
Yes, so whales can get entangled in marine debris. So large, nets. We have a large whale entanglement response program here in Alaska, and there's lots of people kind of around Alaska that are part of that network, and they sometimes can go out and help remove the entanglement. And also whales sometimes will swallow marine debris. There have been a few different whales that have washed up on shore that have their stomachs have been full of plastic bags, so they can, swallow it or get entangled.
Thank you. And on the other end of that, how do animals get stuck in small rubber bands?
Oh, the bands that I'm talking about are they're not like rubber bands that would go, around something in your house. These are they are black rubber bands that are used on crab pots. They're about, they come in different sizes that they can have. They can be like, I don't know, 8 inches, 12 inches, 14 inches and bigger. So yeah, various sizes of, they're called rubber bands, but they're used for fisheries usually.
Great, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
We have another question here. Why do you think people throw things into the ocean?
That's probably, for a variety of different reasons. I think a lot of people are good about cleaning up after themselves and don't mean to litter. At least a lot of people I know. And, sometimes maybe there aren't good trash cans, or they're just, they don't want to take the time to find one, and or maybe out on your boat, they're not being careful and things can blow into the ocean. So maybe if we do a better job of bringing awareness and educate our friends and our families about kind of the impacts of marine debris, maybe people will care more. Maybe they just don't see the impacts. So maybe it's up to all of us to help show them, and maybe that will make a better difference.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, we have another question here from Mrs. Cook's class. They want to know why or what causes the necks to get so red where the entanglement is.
The neck
of the sea lion.
Yeah, well, that's because basically what it's doing, it's cutting into, so it's cutting through the skin, cutting into the blubber. So that's all blood and infection. Yeah, so like just if you cut your finger, it's the same thing, but it doesn't go away because it's just constantly rubbing on their neck, and as they're growing, it's kind of strangling them. So that's what it is. Really sad.
Have you ever seen sea lions help each other remove problem debris?
I have a funny story. I don't think they meant to help each other, but male sea lions are territorial. So in the summertime, they set up a territory on, on the rock, and the females will come and have their pups in these different territories. And a lot of times the males will challenge each other and try to, take each other's territories away. So one time we were out at the rookery where the pups are born, and a sea lion had swallowed a hook, and it had a big lure or flasher hanging from its mouth. And another sea lion came up and was attacking the sea lion and bit the flasher and ripped the whole thing off. So he ended up disentangling the one that he was fighting, but it was awesome. So, but I don't think they really, other than that, I haven't seen them try to like pull anything off of each other.
Okay, great. And so in the interest of time, I've got a couple questions here I'm going to kind of combine. So can entanglement happen to any sea animal? And where are the most entangled sea animals found? What area in Alaska, around the world? Is there a particular spot?
Yeah, so it does occur all around the world. And just as Peter was saying, how all these different entangling materials can move around in the currents and with wind, basically animals all over the world are getting entangled. There's not really an area that they can get away from it anymore, because even in the remote Hawaiian Islands, where I worked on monk seals, which are like 1,000 miles from the main Hawaiian Islands, those islands are just covered in marine debris and buoys and nets and everything. So, there's no people around that area at all, yet there's garbage all over the beaches. So I think, pretty much everywhere, certain areas that have more targeted areas where maybe they are fishing a lot with gill nets or trawl nets or things like that, we do see more, like we see an increase of interactions with seals and sea lions and whales with fisheries. But yeah, when debris is lost or abandoned, it can go anywhere, like Peter was mentioning.
Okay, great. So I want to be mindful of time because we still have 2 speakers to go. So we haven't gotten to all the questions, but if there's time at the end, we will definitely circle back. So thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Tori.
And so we are gonna head over to Barb to hear a little bit more about what you all can do to combat plastic pollution and marine debris.
Thanks, Dory. So hopefully everybody can see my screen now.
Yes.
Great. All right, so my name is Barb, and like Kim said, I work with her here in the Juneau office for NOAA Fisheries. And as you can see from some of my photos, I've been picking up marine debris and garbage with Kim on our lunch breaks and for Earth Day and different things like that. I may have met some of you at school for different STEM outreach events and things. And I have been in and around the ocean my whole life trying to understand it a little more and see what's down there. And it is definitely a passion of mine to not only enjoy the ocean, but try and keep it as natural and pristine as possible. So as Peter and Kim have given us some great background on what marine debris is and what the effects of it can be, you're probably like me and asking yourself, well, what can I do and how can I help? But don't worry, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to get into some solutions. So with that in mind, I have a question for you. What can you do to keep the ocean healthy? So think about some things that you could do to prevent or remove marine debris from the environment, and let me know, what changes could you make in your daily life? What about at home, in the things that you buy, and at school? What are some ways that you can help to keep the ocean healthy?
All right, we already got our first one in. Cut the loops.
Yes.
Pick up trash around the ocean. Don't buy plastic. Don't throw trash in the water. Beach cleanups. Don't litter. I think we've got one more. Yep, don't pollute. Yep. Just reuse, recycle, pick up trash when you see it, reduce, reuse, recycle. These are all really great ideas, and hopefully these are all things that you're already doing. But let's hear, Barb, what are some of the things that you have seen that work?
Yeah, for sure. So those are fantastic ideas. You guys have the right set of mind for what we're going to talk about, and that is the Ocean Guardian School program. So this is a way that you could put all of those ideas and more to work in your school, in your local community. So the school, when you are an Ocean Guardian school, you make a commitment to the protection and conservation of your local watersheds and the world's ocean by proposing and then implementing a school-wide or community-based conservation project. And so the biggest question is, what do you choose and where do you start? There's so many things that you can do, but the school year is short, so you got to stay focused. And so the Ocean Guardian School program gives you some pathways to follow. So you can pick a stewardship project, and the 5 different pathways will help you decide on which issue you want to tackle and what you want to do to focus on for the school year. So of course, the first one is marine debris, like we've been talking about, which is reducing single-use plastics. You can do that on campus by promoting using reusable water bottles or changing some different practices in your school to switch off of plastics. There's the 6 R's, which is refuse, rethink, reduce, reuse, rot, and recycle. And so this could be the implementation of school-wide recycling and composting projects and zero waste lunches. The next one is watershed restoration. So that could be through the removal of invasive species, planting native plants, improving fish habitat in a local stream, or revegetating or replanting streams to have, if they've been stripped of their natural plants, you can put those back. And then energy and ocean health. So this is conducting a school-wide energy audit or finding out what your carbon footprint is and using that information to lead to energy saving projects like having a powering down campaign or installing energy saving light bulbs and having smart switches in your school. You can have a no idling zone. So when your parents are picking you up from school or where the buses are stopped out front, you can have them turn their vehicles off so there's not those emissions going out into the environment that entire time. You can have a bike to school day, install clean energy alternatives like wind and solar, or you can plant some trees on campus. So tons and tons of things that you can do as part of the Ocean Guardian School program. And so let's hear from our Alaska Ocean Guardian schools and what they've been doing. So our longest running school is Thunder Mountain High School. They have been in the program for 4 years, and we're going to hear from Rena next and her perspective on the program at Thunder Mountain. And they have successfully diverted more than 15,000 pounds of recyclables from going into the landfill by implementing a school-wide recycling program. And by switching to metal silverware in their lunchroom, they were able to keep more than 150,000 plastic sporks out of the landfill. They also did school assemblies and education campaigns to educate their student body about the issues surrounding marine debris and how they could change practices in very simple and easy ways to prevent plastic from getting out into the ocean. And they also have done lunch waste audits, which is a very popular project among all of our schools. Another school that has been in the program for 3 years is Sayit-Gastineau Community School. And they also switched to metal silverware in their lunchroom, which resulted in keeping more than 30,000 plastic sporks out of the landfill. In addition, in their lunchroom, they switched to composting. So to date, they've composted more than 2,000 pounds of food waste, and they worked with a local nursery to compost that food material and then get the soil back and use it in their school garden that they started. And with this new focus on waste management at their school, students were noticing trash on the playground, and so started a playground cleanup club. And then they were focused on also not only internal outreach to students within the school, but outreach as well. So they did letter writing campaigns for issues that they saw out in the community to get addressed. And they went on the local radio to talk about their work and the Ocean Guardian School program. We have lots of other schools in Alaska. We have Floyd Dryden Middle School, Montessori Borealis, and Diamond High School, which are all in their first year of the program. And they've been doing similar things in addition to reusable bags and clubs and different things at their schools. And so all of these schools, when you are Ocean Guardian School for more than a year, at the end of the school year, when you've reached all of your program requirements, you get recognized by NOAA as an Ocean Guardian School, and you receive an official Ocean Guardian School banner. So these are our Alaska banners. You get one every year that you're in the program. And it's a great way to leverage resources at your school, like your entire student body, and get your classmates involved in ocean conservation. And so let's hear from one of these Ocean Garden students. So Rena, I'm gonna pass it on to you and take it away.
Hi, my name is Rena Vasiliso. I'm a member of the Ocean Guardians Club here at Thunder Mountain High School. So first, I'd like to start off with my background. I grew up on an island of Guam. As you can see, that's our emblem. And due to my cultural background, I have been heavily influenced by my surroundings. By surroundings, I mean the land, water, and air. And they were believed to have been connected and were elements that we should always respect. So I'd like to start off with an excerpt in my native language, Chamorro. Inipresi. Ginanimas chakalo gihina soku. Imas chakalam gi corazonhu. Zanimas vigu naninas yahu. Hu ofrecen maisazu para bai protehi. Zanhudi fendi. Ihinengi. Ikotura. Ilinguahi I aidi ihanum zenitanum chamorro. Which in English translate to, from the innermost recesses of my mind, from deep within my heart, and with all my might, this I offer to protect and defend the beliefs, the culture, the language, the air, the water, and the land of the Chamorro. This concept and level of respect for the elements was what drove me to become an advocate for Ocean Guardians as a club in our school. This is a video of our achievements of last year.
Ganashchish Shakat Yihan Hat Yadi Shakat Zanta Kahini Skunwan Hush Kanach Wudi Adi Yashaka Akwan Anyikach. Thank you all for gathering today. We, the Juneau students, are gathering on the unceded territory of the Yakwan people.
All right, back to you, Rena.
I'd like to go back towards the video, but so it's okay. So if you didn't read the quick excerpt, it basically said our mission, it's the promotion of environmental awareness, to educate others on the importance of being environmentally conscious, and to provide environmental solutions to better our community, state, and morale. Our day of action. In honor of the 50th anniversary of Ocean Guardians as a whole, our school was supposed to plan a day of action. For our day of action, we have planned is that students would be sorting through the rubbish bins and then in turn would divert compostable materials from the landfill. So we partnered with our local compost organization, Juneau Compost, turning putrescible material into a resource for gardens fertilizer, as well as doing a record of what could not be recycled. And within that record were very surprising results. So for the trash audit, there were 6 plastic bags, 52 milk cartons, 21 plastic straws, 3 metal forks, 1 headphone, 26 plastic utensils, 100 plastic containers, 280 wrappers, and 15 aluminum cans. And that is just within 1 day of lunch. So how to reach out. Originally, Ocean Guardians was designated specifically for our marine biology class, but I then expressed interest in opening it to people who are not in our marine biology class. So this club allowed us to create connections within the community and create more awareness of what is happening in our oceans. So I'd like to start off with what other opportunities there are. For example, there is AYEA, Alaska Youth Environmental Action. It's a summit where you'll be able to connect with other young Alaskan leaders, learn from community advocates and conversation professionals, and practice skills to take action and make change in your community. So you have the opportunity to help shape the future of Alaska and build a more equitable, sustainable community. There are so many opportunities for you to take and are available to you. It's up to you. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rena, and thank you, Barb. So we are just about out of time. We've got about 2 minutes. I don't know that we have much more time for questions, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm just going to pop my camera on here. So again, thank you for joining us for our NOAA Live Alaska webinar. We will be having webinars throughout the fall and spring. Our next ones will be in October, so stay tuned. We'll make sure that we get that information out to you as soon as we have that. So with that, I want to say thank you to all of our presenters and thank you to all of our audience members. We really hope that you learned a lot and not only about the problem, but also those solutions. And again, if you have other questions that didn't get answered, feel free to pop it in the chat right now and we'll do our best to get back to you. But again, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will have this recording available on our website here, hopefully at least by the end of the day, if not, definitely by the end of the week. So thank you all for joining, and we'll see you soon.